welcome to Scrappin with Sheri and page 54 in our sketchbook. Now, if you were with me on the last video, when we did page 53, we did this layout and we saved some of the pieces from it to make the layout today because these will be facing pages. This will be a 2-page spread. So when I'm looking at this, some of the elements I'm going to take are these strips. Now remember, we didn't have a whole sheet, so we cut strips to make these this border around the outside edge of the page. I'm going to take those strips. I'm going to keep this floral print on there. And I'm going to use this gold. This is a gold shimmer, and I used it here for the outline around that page. This time, it's going to be the main background of my page to make them a little bit different. We don't necessarily want them matchy-matchy because they're different, but we want to keep the same feel going. So I'm going to build it all on this gold shimmer paper. The directions show us that these strips need to be 11 1/4 by 3/4. And I'm going to cut those from these strips we cut off the other page. So 11 1/4 means that I just need to take 3/4 of an inch off of the end of these because they're 12-inch strips. And my 3/4 line is almost lined up with the little 2 centimeters here. So I'm just going to cut all of these together at the same time. Now, if you were with me on the last video, you know I had a hard time getting things straight. And a lot of that was because my little tape my measure that I have up here was catching my paper and causing it not to go to the top edge. So I'm trying to be very mindful of that this time. So if you do the math, I've got a 12-inch strip. I needed 11 1/4, so I'm cutting off 3/4 of an inch there. Now we need to make these 3/4 of an inch wide, and I'm not going to try to cut all of those together. I'm lining it up on this side this time, and the 3/4 line is not the first line, but the second line. So I'm going to line that up all up and down, making sure I've got everything straight. Sometimes I have a problem getting things straight. And because there's not a lot of wiggle room in this, I'm going up and down. I'm starting in the center to punch and then going up and down. And I think one strip can actually give me 2 of these. It's not quite 3/4, but very, very close. So I only have to cut 2 of those in order to make it work. And here again, I'm going back to my 3/4 inch line. If you're looking at your 0 centering ruler, it's almost exactly on the 3/4 on the other side. And because they're thin, I'm punching in the center, up, then down. Sometimes with a thin strip, sorry, I got distracted by this tape. Sometimes if it's a really thin strip and you start at the top, it may cause it to just tilt just a touch. So if you start in the middle and go up and down, it makes that easier. And let's look at our inside piece, because that I'm going to cut out of this pretty floral right here. That's a 10 by 10, which basically means if we just take 2 inches off. Remember, with our math, we've got a 12 by 12 sheet of paper. So we're going to take 2 off of one side, rotate, and take 2 off of this side. And that'll leave us with a 10 by 10 square. Now, this square is one of the reasons I felt like this might be a good complementary page to the other one that we had done on the last video, because the other one had a square in the middle as well. And they show little circles here. We're going to go back and use our flowers that we had left over from the one we did on the last video. So I feel like it's a very complementary page. The elements are very similar. So let's go ahead and tape this middle square down. I'm just using my regular tape runner for that. And I'm going to try to center this as much as possible. Here again, if you've got the 13-inch mat, that might be helpful to you to do this. I'm just feeling like eyeballing today. And then we're going to add these strips on there. And I don't want a ton of the gold showing, so I'm going to kind of scoot the strips up. I could add them right along the top edge, and that would give me a lot more space. The problem is then they're not going to overlap. And I do want a little bit of overlap there. So I'm going to bring it down just a hair. I like the way we've got the corners. And I want to be sure I get some corners. I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom one. Kind of looking at the same spacing, top to bottom. And then we'll put on the two side pieces. Here again, I'm eyeballing this, but you can most definitely measure it out if it's really important to you that it works a certain way. And I'm not going to have quite as much overlap as they do, but just a little bit. Just gives us a little bit different look than we've done before. You may see me occasionally too rolling the tape runner with the tip right here. Occasionally my tape runners feel a little tight in the beginning, and I have to kind of coax them along. And you may see me doing that. You typically do not have to use your finger with this tape runner. That's one of the main draws I like about it, is that it's easy for people who even have problems with their hands to use. But occasionally I have to coax it along a little. All right, so we've got that. The next thing I'm going to do is add flowers in all four of my corners. And it shows a circle, but remember those circles are just kind of to show you, hey, something could go here. Make it your own. And to carry the flowers from the last layout, I'm going to add flowers on those four corners. I'm going to use my repositionable tape for the base of the flower. But then if you saw the other video, once again, I'm going to use my foam squares for the middle part. And then I want to show you something I added to it that you probably noticed in the picture of the last layout. And we're going to pull out something we haven't used very much, haven't used in a while. I'm alternating which colors I'm using top to bottom. I'm trying to use the diagonals the same. Let's do our foam squares. And if you remember from the last video, we discovered it was easier to lay the foam squares down in the middle of this. And then just take the backing off and stick the centerpiece right on there. Now, to me, these are pretty. I love it popped because it just gives a little shadowing behind there that makes the center part stand out. But I also wanted a centerpiece in them. And I had several of these little epoxy dots from various Creative Memories collections. This is the lifter stick. I think this is a great tool. I peeled the epoxy dots off just a little bit just to get them so they'll move a little bit easier. And then I touched them with my lifter. Of course, it's not going to work correctly. And then just lay that down in the center of that. And I think the look of that is really cute. It just adds a little bit to it without being too much. And I didn't really want anything that stood up anymore because I've already got these foam squared. So they're already lifted off the page a little bit. These little epoxy dots are flat, but they add a little shine to the middle. I think that's a really cute look. And use the lifter stick to make that happen. So we've got the basic layout already done. There's a little embellishment here, a big title area there. And I do have a title for that. So let me pull that and my photos out and I'll show you how we finish out this page. So here's the title, which kind of introduces us to the hotel. I just printed that out on my printer and cut it out. And I've pulled several pictures, and I'm going to do something I don't typically do. I've got this leftover paper in the navy that I really like. When I matted the pictures on the other page, I used this deeper green. And typically, I would just do everything the same color. But I like the blues in here and the greens. And I really wanted to pull out some navy with this side. So I'm going to bring one green across to match the other page. But then I'm going to do some matting in navy as well. Now, because this is our introduction to the hotel. Now, I had the hotel picture on the other page, which, you know, I probably should not have done. But that's okay. And this is the interior of the hotel right as we walked in. I like this picture a lot, but when I'm looking at this on that background, it is so dark, it really takes away from the picture. So I think I'm going to pull a lighter background to set it apart. And I'm just going to get a scrap of white, and we'll make that work. Now what I've got is the cover sheet from my Tropic Time collection that I've about wiped out. I'm going to just add this as a really, really thin strip. And it's just going to really make the picture pop. This was in the interior as we walked into the hotel. It was an open air lobby, just absolutely gorgeous. And I did want to be sure to include this picture in there just because I don't want to forget what it felt like when we walked in. It was just kind of breathtaking, I guess is the best word for it. It was so very pretty. So I'm going to add that. That gives me a little bit of backing on this. And obviously my pictures are not going to fit into the setting that the original sketch had them. My problem is I don't want to cover up all of the colors here, all of the flowers, but I really want a lot of pictures on this page. I pulled some mats from the mat pack, and that's what you're seeing here. This one is my friend Elaine and I, we had gone to our first dinner together. And I've got the blue mat here. Here again, it kind of fades into the background. So I'm going to use my personal trimmer, cut this down a little bit, and then add a white behind it. I really don't need all of the details of this. I really wanted to show where we were sitting. This was a restaurant, and we've got the poolside bar here, but then we've got all the sunset starting to happen in the background. And one of my next pages is going to be the amazing sunset that night. So I felt like this was a good lead into that. Let's add the white here. And I am going to have to finagle that in the mat and then cut the mat down. If there weren't journaling areas there, I could just slide it up to the top corner. But because of the little journaling spaces there, this one's going to have to be a little bit different. This resort had multiple restaurants in it, which was really fun. I actually ate at 3 of them, I think. And I do have the picture with the name of the this restaurant, so I'll include that. Look what a difference it makes just adding that little bit of white there. So we've got the interior here. And this one I may need to cut down as well, just to give me a little more room on my layout that's not covered with something else. Okay, so we've cut those 2 down. We know that's in the Hilton Riviera. That's the lobby. We've got the picture of us eating. I still got 4 little pictures I would like to get on this page. You think it's going to happen? I'm going to lay these underneath. This is actually the little address as we pulled into the Hilton Riviera in our van we had rented to get there. So I think that would be a good thing to add in. So here again, if I trim this out in white, then add the blue. It's amazing how much darker these pictures are than the ones that'll be on the facing page, because I didn't feel the need to add anything extra on the facing page to make it work. This also is going to be where that new photo trimmer is going to come in handy, because I could trim that on the photo trimmer without having to go back to my big 12-inch. You see me switching back and forth between tools all the time because the size of this little photo trimmer is very limiting. the personal trimmer. The new photo trimmer is going to be so much more versatile. Now, someone asked me the other day, does that mean I don't need the 12 by 12 trimmer, the 12-inch trimmer? It doesn't mean that at all, because what you're going to find is that the 12-inch trimmer is still going to be your go-to for full sheets of paper. The photo trimmer is not made to accommodate a full 12-inch sheet. So, yeah, if you've been debating about buying the 12-inch trimmer and you're going to wait on the photo trimmer, I wouldn't. The 12-inch trimmer and the photo trimmer are going to be perfect complements to one another. And the 12-inch trimmer has all the great blade options that are really fun. The new photo trimmer is not going to have decorative blade options. It's going to be a hatchet arm like this. All right, so we've got these two with our Hilton Riviera title. Not at all like this page, or the sketch here. And I have this picture that's the pool area, but I could always save that for another page down the road. I do have the Seesaw Beach Bar and Grill, which is where we were. And I've got a small picture. Ooh, I knocked my little dot off. I've got a small picture that I developed here at home myself of our room that I think I could just add right down here. So I'm going to save this because there are obviously more pool pictures. That leaves me the sea salt title and then the picture of our room. And I could put these both up here and throw in this little sea salt here. And I think that's what I may do. I was going to say I would pull it down to save space, but there's something about having it enclosed in this square that I like. Here again, dark picture. Let's just frame it out with a little white. And I thought this was going to be a really quick page. You're seeing so much of how your page goes depends on your colors, how you mat, if you mat a lot. You can make really quick pages if you don't do as much matting. But I've said it before, and I'm convinced it's true, that pictures never look worse with matting unless you just choose a really awful color. That's such a pretty design. I don't think I want to cut that off, but I can cut this down and make it work. Now if you've been watching my videos very long, you've seen me manipulate all those white the pictures that I had developed with the white backgrounds. You see me cut those off and reattach, and that's basically what I'm doing right here. This is just a little bit wrong for the journal box in the middle. So all I'm doing is really just taking out the journal box. Let's see how, I just need to split this in half and add it back on. Yes, I could cut this whole sheet of blue paper laying right here beside me, but I find that I don't always use all the mats in a pack. And when I can find a good use for them, rather than cutting up a whole new sheet of paper, that's what I'm going to do. Takes a little bit more time, but I don't have the same amount of waste. All right, see? Now, our picture arrangement is nothing like the original sketch. They have 3 photos, including 1 circle photo on their page. I'm not always into the circle photos. I probably could have made something work, but why bother when I've got all my scenery in these that I want to show? And I'm just getting these 2 together. That gives me a little bit of floral showing on each side. I was thinking I would have to mat this Hilton Riviera. I'm thinking now, because of it going over the edge of those pictures, I don't have to mat it. I'm going to go ahead and stick this one in down in this bottom corner. And here again, I'm leaving a little white showing around the outside edge, not a lot, just enough to show that there's some distinction there. And I'm going to get this one in as tightly as I can, but still leaving a little bit of white around the edges. And then we'll stick this sea salt there. Now, when you're looking at this, and I know I hear people say all the time, oh, you don't do any journaling. I do journaling. It's just not on every single page. It's not always a lot. So I'm not real concerned about the lack of journaling on this particular page, because the page before this is going to have a good bit. The page after this has a little. All right, so that's page 54 in the sketchbook. I'm not going to add any extra embellishments or anything on that. I'm happy with the look of it as is. I may use a couple of the little right now strips and just put our room or the hotel lobby, just some things I may not remember down the road. And you'll see that when you see the finished picture of the page. But let me show you the two together. As I was designing them, it was funny because I actually thought this one would be this side of the page and this would be the opposite side. But the way my pictures fell, I decided to do them this way instead. Now, there's our 2-page spread. We've carried over the gold, we carried over the floral, we carried over this flower in the middle. I like the look of it. So we've got 2 pages using page 53 and 54 in our sketchbook. This one is page 54 and it's done. So happy scrapping until I see you next time.